Welcome back to the Lake Protectors podcast. We are with our very own program director today, Monica LaPlante. Monica, thank you for joining us and walking around the corner to be a part of the podcast.
Anytime.
Usually behind the camera, but today in front of the camera and going to talk to us about the LGA's new Lake Impact Fund. So let's dive right in.
Absolutely.
What is the Lake Impact Fund?
So the Lake Impact Fund is a bigger LGA program that we've just started. And this year we have septic engineering grants and which have closed. But then we also have open septic replacement grants as well. In the future, we're going to have other grants within the Lake Impact Fund, like stormwater we have upcoming, and maybe some other things.
Okay.
So the septic grants that we're going to talk about today are really just like a subset of the Lake Impact Fund.
Okay, awesome. So there were other septic grants that had rolled out partly this year, but did it start last year?
I think we might have opened up applications end of last year, and then they closed sometime this year, and we're distributing
This is
money.
a whole new program.
Whole new, much more money.
Much more money. Yeah. How much are we talking here?
We're talking $10,000.
$10,000 per person.
Per person.
Or per, I guess, property.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So per property, and it's a matching program?
Yes, it is. So
Okay.
we're only going to fund up to 50% of your septic replacement.
Okay.
So, you got to spend $20,000 to get the full $10,000 from us.
Right.
If you only spend 10, we'll give you 5, that type of thing.
Okay. That's huge. Septic replacements are quite expensive. So how does someone go about, like, what are the steps to either find out if you're eligible, or like what in and of itself is the process?
Yeah, totally. So let's see, we can go through eligibility now.
Yeah, let's go through eligibility.
So the first thing is that you have to be within the Park Commission's inspection area and within their date range.
Okay.
So they started their program on April 1st of 2023.
Okay, so about a year and a half that they've been going on. Okay.
Yeah. And then within their project area, so that's 500 feet of the Lake George shoreline, as well as 100 feet of a regulated stream.
Okay. We will have an episode about the septic inspection program, so be on the lookout for that as well with Randy Rath. Okay, so within the septic program of the Park Commission that has rolled out, it's been about a year and a half. So anybody who has had their inspection done via the Park Commission would be eligible? No. It would have to be eligible, open to it, but pending what their designation is from the Park Commission.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that you need to have failed. So like a failed system is like a cesspool, so like a hole in the ground that all of your waste is going into.
Old.
Yeah, really old, really, really bad. That's kind of what gets designated as failed, is when it's like really bad and it's an immediate, effect on the lake and needs to be fixed up right away.
Or just simply not functioning.
Yeah.
We've heard horror stories of metal tanks in the ground. Yeah. Something along those lines that would be just an all-out fail. Okay, so...
But substandard.
Deemed failed, substandard, yes, is another classification. Substandard, not eligible.
It's not eligible. Okay. So with substandard, that's some things like, your system is undersized for your family. So you have a system that's for 3 bedrooms and you have 5 bedrooms or something along those lines. So those type of systems don't have an immediate impact on the lake. Not necessarily, at least, or we're hoping. So you have more time. You have about 5 years to update your system.
And
versus
usually the whole system doesn't have to be redone. It's just like a portion of it, right?
Okay. Typically, I have heard of some people that are need to do some other things, but there's a lot of options out there. But basically with substandard, you have 5 years to do it. So we're thinking that, you have a little bit more time to, find those funds and kind of get it together, versus 6 months for a failed system is a really, really short turnaround time.
Completely. Particularly as we go towards the winter months and the ground freezing. So
yeah, and I know the Park Commission has said that the 6 months, like, that's ideal. But if you stay in communication with them and you keep them updated, they're flexible on that as long as you're working towards it. Because ground freezing and a lot of other things definitely come into play with all of that. Let's see some other eligibility things. So your property has to be residential and you have to not do short-term rentals on it.
Okay. So no commercial, no short-term rent. What about a long-term rental?
I think we might be okay with that, but that will
Okay.
kind of come out in the application,
Right.
and we'll evaluate that as it comes through. But because the short-term rental thing is such a big, like, hot topic issue around here, and even with the long-term rentals, like, we are really trying to target people who like live here, like
Yeah,
the community that's here full time or most of the time, that contributes all year long. We just aren't looking for the people who have, like,
Less vested
McMansion
interest.
on the lake that's here for 2 months that also has other investment properties, and they're trying to make money off their waterfront property on Lake George. Like, that's
Right.
not like
They can
who we're trying to
probably
support.
afford their
We
septic
would hope.
system if
Yeah.
they need replacement.
We would
So we're
hope.
targeting community members, people who really need this money.
Yeah, and that's the last thing, is the financial need aspect
Yeah.
of this. We want to help people who are going to be really impacted by the inspection program. I mean, it's so important, like,
Yeah.
the program itself, and it's going to help the lake so much. And it's an incredible program, but it's going to hit people really hard in the beginning financially. So we want to help those people who are going to struggle with that.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Where can people where do you even find this grant?
So if you go on our website,
Yeah.
lakegeorgeassociation.org/lake-impact-fund,
Perfect.
which we will link.
Yes, we will link.
It will be linked everywhere.
Yeah.
We have all the application materials on there. So
Okay.
that page has FAQs. It has all the eligibility requirements. It has just everything about the grant that you could possibly need, and then some.
Yeah.
And that also houses the link to the application, which is a software that we purchased for grant applications and grant management specifically. So it's really secure with all of
Very
your
secure.
data and information.
I've gone through it several times just in the trialing to make sure. By what we've applied for a lot of grants here at the LGA, some will take you days, weeks, months. This one, it's relatively easy. And on the webpage, it tells you everything you need upon even entering the grant portal to apply for it. So you're pretty much set up. Penny, you follow the rules and everything that it says. But it's a pretty simple grant to apply for upon having everything you need. So let's talk about some of the documents that you need in applying for this grant.
Yeah, and that's why I have my little paper
Yes.
here, because I'm like, I need to hit on all of
Gotta
these
hit on everything.
things.
It's very important.
Yeah, so because there's these are big grants, right?
Yeah.
Like, these aren't tiny. And
Yeah.
we're trying to make sure we're servicing the correct people. So we are requiring a decent amount of documents.
Yeah.
So, as much as the application is quick to go through, the part that's going to take you the most time is compiling all those documents and getting them ready. So that might take a minute, but definitely worth it for $10,000. It's probably the least amount of work you'll do for $10,000.
Truly. Yeah.
So what we need are the failed letter saying, like, your
Yeah,
system
okay.
failed. So that can come from either the park commission,
Yeah.
or if you want to jump on it, you can have an engineer come to your property and they can look at it and basically deem it that it would have failed the park commission's
So before
program.
the park commission even seeks someone out and says, hey, we want to inspect yours, you can proactively
You can.
have someone come out if you think there might be an issue, that failed letter. So one or the other. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people are trying to, like, get on top of it, which is really
definitely.
great. So
Particularly when there's grant opportunities
Exactly.
available.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we need that failed letter to make sure it's failed, not substandard. We want service agreements and contracts with your contractors, anybody that you're working with on the project, to make sure it's legit, they're legit.
Septic company, engineers, something along those lines. Okay.
We need the engineering site plans and details as certified by a licensed engineer. So we expect you to already have that completed at that point.
That's something you'd have to provide to the municipality as well.
Yes.
So that
Yep.
is not, that has to be done no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next one actually is the town approved permits with variances. So that flows right into that. I will say that we are looking for these projects to require the least amount of variances possible, 0 if at all possible. We don't want you to require all these variances to then have to change the landscape even more away from its
Right.
natural state or like mess with things.
Right.
But we understand that so many of these properties are so small. They are hilly, they are rocky. You don't have enough space. You can't drill into the ground. It's not far enough away from your well. You don't have a leach field.
Right.
So we totally get all those things, and
Right.
variances may very
maybe
well.
requirement or
Yeah.
even like better serve the
Yeah.
property.
Totally. But we just don't
But-
want people applying to apply. Like we're
Yeah.
looking for projects that, are really keeping it simple, keeping it as less disruptive as possible.
Yeah. To the landscape.
To the
and of course,
landscape.
like helping with any
Yeah.
mitigation of wastewater leaching
Yeah.
into the lake.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but this actually comes back to another point of kind of eligibility is that this is a reimbursement grant, right? So
okay.
I think Warren County's program, you can get approved like in advance for it, and then they
Okay.
distribute money like as you go through your project, but ours is reimbursement.
Okay.
So you need to have spent that $20,000 in order to get the 10 or completed your project and have spent like under that 20 and just shown like
And then
we're
after the
we're
fact.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll give you half of whatever
Right.
that is.
I believe it's Adirondack Trust and Glens Falls National both offer 0% interest on loans for paying for it. So could somebody use one of those to help offset that initial cost if they don't have up to 20,000 and then still apply? Would that documentation need to be needed as well, or?
Probably, I would
Okay.
imagine.
Yeah.
I think it's no interest and or low
Yeah.
interest and no interest. Like it's one and both, but
Yeah.
it's some great programs.
Yeah.
So definitely give them a call if somebody needs to fill in the gaps. Also, Warren County and other municipalities, not just Warren County, have given state money for
Yeah.
the last few years for septic replacements, and they're. I don't think that they require a financial aspect to their stuff, and I think their application's like pretty quick and easy versus ours is a little bit more in depth. So I think those are $10,000 too, and the same thing up to 50%.
Okay.
Or maybe that's just Warren County. I'm not sure if the municipalities can decide what they're doing with it, but you're welcome to go grab that money as
Yeah.
well. We're not going to like say you're ineligible if you've
Because you
gotten
used
other
it, yeah.
grant money,
Okay.
because you might need it at that
Right.
point. But
Yeah.
there's definitely options for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
But you do have to be well along your way before you apply for our grant. And that's just because, amongst a lot of other things, like we have a lot of money that we need to get out by the end of the year, about
Yeah.
$200,000 ish. And so we need to like be able to write those checks right away.
Yeah.
And just
ASAP.
yeah, and it just makes things a lot easier for us when we have like a one and done application and we can just have all the materials that we need, make the decision, send you the money versus like waiting for invoices and like managing
Right.
that process.
Have
is
everything
very-
together.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to get this money is have all your documents. So someone has all their documents, they apply. From the time of application, how long are they hearing back? And then from that, how long is that until that check is cut to them?
I don't have a great answer for
Okay.
that. I know that that's like a hot topic question that everybody
but
would.
by the end of the year.
Yes, it might. It could be a little bit past
Yeah.
it that you actually get the check, but we'll probably close applications in December. I'm kind of hoping we get enough applications that like, it's so in demand that
Yeah.
we don't like make it all the way necessarily. So I definitely want people to get their stuff in as soon as possible. But yeah, for this, the 2024 fiscal year. So we're also, the LGA is working on fiscal years. So like we have to disperse money based on that time frame, right? So by the end of the year, we have all that money to give out.
Yeah.
Next year, we're going to have another $200,000 to give out as well. And we'll have a little bit more time, obviously, from
Yeah.
like January to December. So this process is, for the end of this year, is like going to move pretty
quickly. This has
basically.
been a long time in the making, though. We've been talking about this it started with the septic engineering grant, but then it has snowballed into this massive program of which the funding has come from different, areas, whatnot that we've gotten. And certainly the Lake Champlain Basin program has helped out with a huge portion of it. But
Yeah, the Lake Champlain Basin program gave us a lot of money, as well as the Wright Family Foundation
Yes.
was so generous
Yeah.
with their money, and they want to be a part of fixing up these septic systems and keeping
Yeah.
water quality clean around the lake. So,
Very
big
grateful.
shout out to both of those funding
Yeah.
sources.
They're
There's
the reason we have this
literally
like,
for the next
huge
2
program.
years. Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
money secured, and then we're hoping to continue with it after that. We want to support the inspection program for its entirety,
Absolutely.
would be the goal.
Yeah. And I mean, the septic inspection program, we've talked about it with a few of the folks over there. It's every 5 years you get inspected, but it's known that there's a lot of failing systems. So, like a program like this can hugely help those folks that need help. But down the road, as you go and these systems get updated, there shouldn't be that many failing systems. I mean, it's a rotating door, but you should get to a point where, like, you're having way fewer failures than there had been in the previous 5 years. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly all the stipulations for what fails, what's substandard,
Yeah.
but I would say hypothetically there shouldn't be any more failures after the program's done, right?
Right.
Like, 'cause
After the
all
first 5-year
cesspools
program,
will
they
be
all,
gone.
well, I would say, I guess 6 years, because 5-year, if you have 6 months, a year
Yeah.
or so to fix it up. But as soon as they start rolling out that next one, the
Yeah.
number of failures should hugely decrease.
Oh, absolutely.
I know over at the Park Commission, they are like fast track trying to do
Oh my
a
God.
few hundred before the
Yes.
ground freezes. So they are just running around like little mice and trying to do all of these. So for the folks that are just still in the process of, you're at the end of the year, you have to get inspected. The funds for this year might not be available because it's just too short of a time frame. But then when we roll into next year, there would be a whole new series of eligibility that comes through. I mean, I suppose if someone has the opportunity to work like mad dash fast and they had their inspection last week and failed, they might. But we're getting down to the wire.
Yeah,
on
for
that.
sure. And I think, some people who started the process earlier this year maybe will be ready and eligible. But remember that the program started early 2023. So we're kind of looking at our grant program as servicing like the year prior.
Yeah.
So like a little bit staggered because of that construction process necessity.
And I'm trying to remember what the percentage was they said failed. Back in 2020. Yeah,
25%,
I was going to say,
right?
I thought it was like 25%.
It was higher than they
25. Definitely higher than they thought. So if you are listening and think, hey, I might be eligible, or you've already done the upgrades and maybe it put a huge strain on you, like certainly reach out to us, because if you've got questions, we'll have answers for sure.
Yeah. I think there's a few more documents here.
Yeah.
We basically went through most of them, but a few other things is if you have site photos and you want to submit them, we would love to look at them and check them out, but not required. Like we talked about, we need paid invoices to prove that you have
Spent the money.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I want to point out about that is that like these receipts, like they need to be just that, like a receipt or an invoice that says like paid, $0 owed. We will not, be able to do anything with just an invoice or a quote that says you're going to pay this amount. Like we need to be certain that the contractor has been paid for that money. Yeah. So just make sure you have all of that before you apply, because the way that we're doing it is that like if something or in your application isn't completed, we're going to request it from you, but then you go back in line basically. So because again, we don't have time to be chasing people down
Don't
for
get
things,
pushed to the end of the line.
unfortunately. And with our grant money having to go out in these fiscal years, especially so soon this year, like we need to be certain that like we can write those checks right away. And we don't want to promise money to somebody that like then half a year from now, it's a different fiscal year. It's a different thing.
Right.
So, and then the last thing is the finances, right? Like because we're trying to prove financial need here, we need people to show us some numbers.
Yeah.
So we're basically asking for like assets, liabilities type thing, but then your tax returns from the last year.
Okay.
And because we're using this grant software, everything's really secure.
Yeah.
And also the way we have it set it up is that you list out the owners of the property, and then each owner gets a separate email to fill out their finances after. So like the owners won't see each other's finances.
Yeah, like a family of 5.
Yeah, like if
Or
we're
however many are
Yeah.
involved. Some of these properties are in trusts that have, half a dozen people related. So
yeah, and you don't want
you
like
don't have
other
to share
people.
your siblings.
Yeah, exactly.
Financial
So
information.
it's all secure and private.
Yeah.
But that's a good point about the trust and the LLCs. Like we are, like those people are still eligible, right?
Yeah.
Like we understand that there's so many different reasons and ways you would put a property in an LLC, in a trust, in a S corp, in a partnership,
Yeah.
or just a sole proprietor.
Protection.
Yeah, so we're open to all of that. It's
Yeah.
more about like how many owners are involved, how many people are involved in that entity, that LLC, that trust, and then the finances of each of those people. So, we're not looking to exclude anybody. We will delve deep into those details, and we do have an area within the application that's just like kind of an open-ended, like you want to write us like any additional details, like tell us the ownership structure, how it works. As if you're like, okay, well, there's 3 people on it, but like my 2 siblings don't actually contribute at all, and it's just me. Like we need to know those things, like so we
absolutely.
can.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I also there could be names on the deed and people who haven't been to the house in 30 years.
Exactly.
I also like there's a portion of the application where you ask, have there been any financial strains this year? Someone could make a really, great salary amount of money, whatnot, contributing to this household, but maybe there's been a medical issue, or maybe there's been something that like we don't need necessarily like the in-depth details, but certainly you can say I had to pay X amount of dollars for something, and like that will certainly be taken into account with
definitely,
something.
because stuff like that's not going to show up like in the numbers that we're asking for. So if there's been some other thing,
you
like
had to put a new roof
we've
on,
got
you had to buy a new like anything can happen.
Not everything will like quote unquote count, right?
Right.
Like if you're doing an upgrade to your house just to do an upgrade, sorry, that doesn't count.
Right.
But like, let us know, and we can, if you're not sure, write it in there and we
Things
can do the
taken into
assessment.
consideration.
Yeah, but we do have a field for that in there that you can fill out. That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, someone who has like, I've heard of this a few times around on the lake because some of these parcels are so small, a shared septic system.
Mhm.
So if 2 homeowners have a shared septic inspection, do they both apply? And that would figure into the, ownership aspect of it.
That's a really good point. So when we went live with this program, you think through everything, right? Like every situation. But there's no way. This is our first time doing such a big grant program. So we immediately started getting emails and calls about like these HOA communities.
Yeah.
So what I found with each of those messages is that every single one is different from the rest. Like truly, like how they pay it, how the systems are set up. Every part of it is different. So what I'm asking those groups of people to do right now is to email grants@lakegeorgeassociation.org.
Okay.
You can also call me, but it is nice to have kind of a paper trail.
Like written so you can even refer back to and remember.
Exactly.
And then be able to answer to that as well. And they have it in writing.
Yeah. So email me if possible, like a detailed explanation of the situation. And, I'll let you know if we have any more questions, but we'll kind of review that internally. And right now I have maybe 4 or 5 of those that we're going to meet soon and kind of review and start making decisions on like what situations, we are looking to fund.
Right.
So,
If there's, 10 owners on one septic system, funding is certainly more so than like a lone wolf out there trying to keep their family's lake house.
Totally. Yeah, there's so much to take into consideration. So
property value being one thing. I mean, some of these places are so old and have been in families for so long, like what that value was to what it is now and what they're paying. Taxes, some people are literally working just to pay taxes on some of these properties.
Yeah, we want to make
and
sure
to keep it.
Yeah, no one's going to lose their property over this.
Over something.
Yeah. They shouldn't have to, but at the same time, like we need to take care of the lake because the lake gets yucky. Like what happens to your property?
You have no property.
Yeah, exactly.
We were just looking at examples of that the other day in fish kills. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Monica, I'm going to hit you with some questions here.
Okay.
Starting with what do we consider in need? We've talked about financial information people have to submit, but like deemed in need, what does that mean?
Another great question. It's funny. We took a long time with this one and kind of came out with not a lot after all of our research. So, I mean, I think as people know, the income and wealth levels that are around the lakeshore, within the septic inspection program, the waterfront properties, like they're, not everybody is extremely wealthy that owns those. There's obviously like a lot of families that have things handed down. But the income and wealth disparities between like those types of properties and other places in the watershed is very large. So when you're looking at generic numbers, which we like pulled, income for the county and that type of thing, we couldn't use like the median number, because it wasn't applicable, and like people around the waterfront might have a different median or low number than people on streams in the watershed that are also regulated through this program.
Remember, the whole program is 500 feet of shoreline, 100 feet of stream.
Yes.
So closer to a stream, and there's houses tucked way up in the watershed that are
exactly.
There have to be people in need around.
Yeah. So we kind of have some things that we sketched out, but it was more of like a cap.
Yeah.
Of like we feel like if you kind of look like this type of individual on paper, and through your description, like it'll look like you might have enough to be able to pay for all of this.
Yeah.
But again, it's a really loose outline, and I think we're going to learn a lot more about all of these things as we get applications in. Like I'm hoping as we get them in, it's blatantly obvious as to who needs the money versus who doesn't. I don't want it to get down to the minutia of things. But again, like we're really open to so much, and we're going to take a lot of time to review these applications and go through the nitty gritty of everybody's info. So, you're not going to get, picked over because there wasn't a place on the application for you to like write some details in or like explain your situation.
Because those options are available in the application to explain your situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If someone has already spent a substantial, maybe over $20,000 for the engineering aspect of it, because maybe they have such a unique property, are they eligible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this grant is actually for like construction related things. So that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to count the engineering stuff in that number. It feels like we might not.
Yeah.
I'll have to check on that one. But it's not just for engineering. We want to help you cover the construction side of things, which that can add up very quickly. But, also take into consideration where, it's only for the septic related things. Like if you are going to redo something else in your property or like, putting lawn back on, like we're not going to, that's something you're going to have to cover. But again, like this is a matching program. So you're spending at least $10,000 anyway to get your $10,000 match. So
and it's reimbursement.
Yeah,
we are not paying for new lawns, new baseball fields, new conservatories, septic only.
Yeah.
But there's folks who live on islands. We know an instance of someone who lives on an island, and just the construction, like to get the materials to this island via barge, like,
oh my God.
It essentially doubles the cost of everything.
Getting things out to properties that are only water accessible is like a whole other thing.
Huge.
But I mean, even people on these little peninsulas, and so much.
Can a truck get through there?
Can a truck even get down these roads?
Yeah.
Can construction equipment get down there?
And navigating the terrain of some of these properties that are extremely steep.
Exactly. And so many properties too. I mean, the watershed is granite or what? I shouldn't have said that. I actually don't know.
You might be right.
Limestone. Let's just list all the rocks.
Granite, limestone, marble.
Well, I think it's a marble bedrock.
Yes. Carved out via the glaciers. It's stunning. It is beautiful. There might be, I don't know, some
Yes, a
Some
marble
type of
bedrock.
other
But regardless, it is hard down there, right? Like, so blasting through all of that, especially on these properties, it would be tricky even if it wasn't like
bedrock.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's crazy, but there's so many cool systems out there now, right?
yeah.
And so just do your research. I have heard of some people who have spent crazy amounts of money for a more traditional system, and like, granted, like, you know, they can do some. There's like, I think, a peat system and like some other things that, you know, like a raised leach field. I am not the person to go through these types of systems.
Of those in like my real estate area.
There's
few above ground, but they're like covered. I also have seen ones up on the Sacandaga that is almost like a two-fold system of like tank, somewhat leach field, but it wasn't called a leach field. Very expensive system, but will last probably many generations, like the length of that house and however many owners are at that house. So something like that would qualify for the finance, you know, pending you fall in the in-need category. But if you do want to take it upon yourself to do this really technologically, you know, advanced system that maybe you wouldn't need to replace in another 25 years.
And there's just so many options out there. So there's also like fully above ground systems.
I've seen those too.
So that's why I'm like, do your research. Like, don't just get one quote. Like, call around, call us, and we'll like give you some info. The one company that I do know of, and this is not an ad, is Busse, Busse.
Okay.
So you can just Google that. I don't know what the website is, but they're like a fully above ground system. So when you're bringing up the islands, they've installed some of these systems on islands. So you don't have to dig into the ground at all.
Right.
Like, you know, I think you have to give it like a little bit of a platform, like put some concrete down and
like
then
fill or some type of
and either it goes in your basement or you put it in like a shed that stays warm or something like that. But you're not cutting into the ground at all. I think probably save for like your pipes or whatever. But that's a great alternative. I mean, granted, like that might be a little bit more expensive than a traditional system, but if you're in a position where that's kind of one of the only things you can get, I guarantee that that's probably going to be cheaper than like trying to go through that bedrock and do all that stuff.
And have like I refer to all heavy machinery as a bulldozer. Have a bulldozer come out there and like dig. I'm trying to like envision that going across the lake and
So I think like these, they're called enhanced treatment units, and those can be below ground too, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's just a system that kind of like filters and processes things like a little bit more, I think, efficiently than necessarily just like a tank and a leach field would. So those systems are great, like in general, if you want to put one of those in. There's so many different ways you can do it. I mean, there's wastewater engineers out there, right? That like, this is their job to go to these job sites and tell you how they can do this. But you know, get all your information because one contractor might not tell you everything because they might specialize in one type of system. So call around, find out what works best for you. Yeah, tons of options.
You have options. We have funding.
And we have funding, yes.
For some of you.
Yes.
But again, this is an expansion, you know, a program that will expand and have some longevity here. But, you know, the whole point is for water quality and protecting the water quality.
Exactly.
We know there's issues in certain areas. You can see the algae in the water.
Yes.
So we want to curb all of that and help all of that. If someone needs more information, questions, whatnot, we said to reach out to you. Can you just say what that email address is again?
Yep. Grants, which is plural, grants at lakegeorgeassociation.org. You can also call the office and ask for Monica if you want to talk to me. And again, the website is lakegeorgeassociation.org/lake-impact-fund.
That's where you can find how to access the application and all other information.
So much information.
You might need. Okay. We've touched on it briefly, but like the future of the program, we've got it through 2024. We've got funding through 2025. And then hopefully we'll actively pursue after. And did you mention stormwater?
I did,
funding
yeah.
as
So
well?
stormwater funding will open up next year. We haven't
Okay.
totally sketched out that entire program yet. The number is going to be obviously lower than the wastewater grants, but it'll be very similar matching program.
Okay.
It won't have anything to do with the septic inspection program. I
Right.
think it's going to be for anybody in the watershed. But yeah, if you have a stormwater project that you need assistance with, like we want to encourage people to do those types of projects.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're not sure where to start, like with that, we can come out and do a property visit too and kind of help you along in that process. So that grant program, I think, will be a little bit more hands-on.
Yeah.
For
and
us.
we'll definitely do another episode when that
for
all
sure.
gets rolled out.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have Jim Liebram come back because
Why not?
he's great at these, and also a great resource for stormwater questions within Warren County. Any of
For
your
sure.
soil and
That's a
water
good
districts
point.
would
Yeah.
be too. So
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
Any other last thoughts, questions? Anything we want to add?
I mean, we really covered everything.
think
I'm
so,
looking
too.
at my paper here, and we went through everything.
Like I said, I am proud of us for the seriousness with which we have
Yes.
encountered this. So thank you so much for coming on.
course.
We're going to go giggle on the other side now. And we'll see you back next time. Bye.
Bye.
The Lake Protectors Podcast is a production of the Lake George Association. To check out the work that the LGA is doing, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Lake George Association. You can also visit our website at lakegeorgeassociation.org. This episode was produced by Jacqueline Mignot. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.